In this session, we will conduct an academic analysis of the doctrine of negligence in environmental law. Let's consider a scenario. A company pollutes a river, or a factory cuts corners on safety. Who is responsible? Well, that's where the doctrine of negligence comes into play. We're going to examine how environmental law uses this very powerful concept to hold entities accountable for carelessness that harms our planet. We'll break down what it is, how it works, and precisely why it matters. So, to begin, let's establish the foundational principles. What exactly is negligence in a legal sense? You see, it's really important to understand that it's far more than just a simple mistake or a common accident. At its core, it's about a very specific failure, a failure to meet a standard of care that the law itself expects from every single one of us. Now, according to the legal definitions provided, negligence is, and I quote, a coming short of the performance of duty. It is also defined as a negative word, which signifies the absence of care. So what does this actually mean? The key takeaway here is that negligence isn't necessarily about an act of doing something wrong. Rather, it's about an omission, the absence of doing something you were legally required to do. It's that gap between the level of care a situation demanded and the care that was actually provided. Underpinning this entire concept is a foundational legal maxim. It's in Latin, sic utere tuo ut alienum non laedas. Now, the English translation is direct and incredibly powerful. Enjoy your own property without causing injury or harm to others. You really have to appreciate how fundamental this is. This is the very bedrock of so much of our environmental law. Essentially, your right to use your property and conduct your affairs ends at the precise point where it begins to harm the environment or other people. Okay, so let's break this down further. Legally, negligence is an actionable wrong that can manifest in two distinct domains. First, in civil law, we refer to it as a tort. This means the negligent party may be required to pay monetary compensation for the harm they've caused. Second, it can be a criminal offense, which can lead to punishment, like fines or even imprisonment. Now, here's the critical point for our study. In environmental law, it's very often both. A perfect practical example of this is an industrialist who chooses not to install a mandatory effluent treatment plant, an ETP, simply to save on costs. That single decision results in pollution. And for that careless and illegal choice, the law can hold them both civilly and criminally liable. Now we move into a more jurisprudential examination of negligence. You see, legally there are two primary theories for how we should view negligence, and it really comes down to a classic debate. Is negligence about what was going on in a person's mind, their mental state, or is it simply about their external conduct, what they actually did? This fundamental disagreement gives us the two main schools of thought, the subjective and the objective theories. First, let's examine the subjective theory. This theory posits that negligence is fundamentally a state of mind. Proponents like Salmond, Austin, and Winfield argue that true negligence is about a mental attitude of carelessness, or what they term culpable indifference. The central question for this theory is, was the defendant's state of mind one of carelessness? Did they simply not care about the potential consequences? Now, regardless of this focus on the mind, to establish a claim under this theory, you must still prove three essential ingredients. First, a duty of care existed. Second, there was a breach of that duty. And third, damage was the result. In direct contrast, we have the objective theory. This theory is not concerned with trying to read anyone's mind. Instead, it defines negligence as a type of conduct. Jurists like Pollack and Alderson argue that the focus should be purely on a person's observable actions. The crucial question here is not what the defendant was thinking, but what a hypothetical reasonable person would have done in the same circumstances. If the defendant's conduct falls below that objective standard, then they are considered negligent. As you can imagine, this approach is often more straightforward for the courts, as it relies on judging observable behavior rather than speculating about a person's internal mental state. All right, having examined the two competing theories, let's move to the practical application. To succeed in any legal action for negligence, a plaintiff must prove three mandatory components. These are often called the three pillars for establishing negligence. And you can think of them like the three legs of a stool. If even one of these elements is missing, the entire claim will fail. So, what are these three legal requirements? Let's go through them one by one. First, the plaintiff must prove there was a duty of care. And let's be clear, this isn't just a moral suggestion, it is a binding legal obligation. In the context of environmental law, this duty is often rooted in Article 21 of our Constitution, the right to life, which has been interpreted to include the right to a clean and healthy environment. Second, the plaintiff must demonstrate a breach of duty. This is where the objective, reasonable man standard is applied. The question is asked, did the defendant's conduct fall below the standard of care expected of a reasonable person? And third, there must be consequential damages. It's not enough that a duty was breached. The plaintiff has to prove that this breach actually caused harm or injury. And this is where the polluter pays principle becomes operative, making the polluter liable not just for compensating victims, but also for the costs of restoring the damaged environment. Okay, we've covered quite a bit of theory. Now, let's move on to negligence in practice. We'll look at how these principles are applied through a few illustrative scenarios, and of course, some landmark case law. Let's consider our first scenario, the learner driver. Imagine an individual with a learner's permit who is fully aware of their limited driving skills. Despite this, they decide to drive in heavy, chaotic traffic and subsequently cause a serious accident. Legally, this is a clear case of what we call culpable negligence. The subjective state of mind, the awareness of their lack of skill, combined with the reckless action, constitutes a severe wrong. Now for a scenario directly relevant to environmental law, the industrialist's greed. A factory owner makes a calculated business decision. They fail to construct a required effluent treatment plant simply to save money. As a direct result, their factory discharges untreated pollutants into a nearby river, causing significant environmental harm. This demonstrates both a negligent attitude, prioritizing profit over safety, and a clear breach of a statutory duty. It is a textbook example of environmental negligence. And our final scenario illustrates the objective theory perfectly, the pavement accident. A person is driving at night without their headlights on and hits a pedestrian. In this case, the driver's state of mind is largely irrelevant. It doesn't matter if they were merely forgetful or distracted. The conduct itself, driving without lights at night, is so far below the standard of a reasonable and prudent driver that it constitutes a clear case of objective negligence. The action itself is the proof. Now we turn to a landmark case that every law student must know. The case is Donegue v. Stevenson, citation 1932 AC 562. Let's analyze this using the IRAC framework. First, the facts. Mrs. Donegue consumed a bottle of ginger beer that was later found to contain the decomposed remains of a snail. She suffered from shock and gastroenteritis. Since a friend had purchased the drink, she had no direct contract with the manufacturer, Stevenson. This brings us to the central issue. Did the manufacturer owe a duty of care to the ultimate consumer, Mrs. Donegue, despite the absence of a contract? The ratio decidendi, famously articulated by Lord Atkin, established the neighbor principle. He stated, "You must take reasonable care to avoid acts or omissions which you can reasonably foresee would be likely to injure your neighbor." And the final decision? The House of Lords held in a landmark ruling that a duty of care was indeed owed. This case fundamentally established the modern tort of negligence. So, to put all of this together, we can map out the logical flow of a negligence claim. It's a 5-step process. Step 1, you must identify the existence of a legal duty of care. Step 2, you must establish a breach of that specific duty. Step 3, you must prove proximate cause, that the breach directly led to the harm. Step 4 is to quantify the damage, be it economic, physical, or, in our context, ecological. And finally, Step 5 is to apply the remedy, which typically involves compensation for the victim and the application of the polluter pays principle for environmental restoration. All right, let's conclude with a quick revision of the most critical points from this session. These are the must-know takeaways for your examinations. First, the definition. Negligence is a failure to meet a legal duty of care. Second, the theories. Remember, the subjective theory concerns the state of mind, while the objective theory focuses on conduct. Third, the standard of care. This is benchmarked against the actions of a prudent and reasonable person. And finally, fourth, the core environmental principle, the polluter pays principle. That concludes our academic analysis of negligence in environmental law.